Hey guys and girls, Board now back with you. On this video I will be reviewing The Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power I should say. So season 1 episode 1. The episode is called A Shadow of the Past. Full spoilers from the start of this review. So the new and muchly anticipated Amazon Lord of the Rings show, the most expensive TV show in history. I think it is, certainly for Amazon, but I think it might be the most expensive full stop. So the first 2 episodes are on Amazon now. This is going to be my overall impressions of episode 1. So they're taking a slightly different approach to the Peter Jackson movies and also the books, from what I believe. So a lot of this first episode is sort of like backstory and setup. We have this character of Geladrin. I'm not quite sure how you say her name, but she features a lot in the opening episode. But I do know the actress. It's the actress out of St. Maud, which is a really good horror movie. I highly recommend St. Maud if you haven't seen it. And she's a very good actress. She was really good in that. And without spoiling my thoughts on this episode, she's good in this as well. But so she, in the past, she plays this young girl whose brother is killed by a character called Sauron, who's an orc, and his sort of life work was like proving the existence of these characters, these orcs, and proving that they were still roaming about and causing havoc, killing people. So because this character Sauron killed her brother, then Grenadine makes it her life work then to finish his life work, so to track down this Sauron. And we get, her as a grown-up with this army of characters, like, pursuing him, trying to track him down. We get them on, like, snowy mountains at one point, trying to find clues to where he might be. They have certain information about where he could be. But then at a certain point, she gets to a village in Middle-earth where her sort of people are situated, and it's ruled by a certain kingdom, and she is like honoured at a ceremony at one point, but she's sort of told them really their society have moved on and that all they're interested in is living peacefully and what have you, and that there wouldn't really be support for her sort of crusade. And there's sort of, in a way, like another like family member is like poo-pooing her suggestion, and this character is still out there, and that there's not peace in Middle-earth and what have you. But she's obviously determined to do so, to continue her brother's mission. And by the end, she is, of this episode, she's once again like pursuing that. We get like a fantastical sequence at the end of the episode. And the other stuff, it's setting up quite a few different characters and conflicts. So another big theme in this first episode is like the conflict between like the elves and like the human characters in this one village, and can they coexist? And once again, the past is tied into that stuff, and some of the rivalry. We see like an argument in a pub at some point. We also see then there's this character, this elf character, who, well, he's certainly close to like a human, to like a village girl. And it's at least hinted that there could be some sort of romance and how that could stir up tensions. But they're also like working together at the end, where they feel there might have been like an attack from another village. So you've got those sorts of things going on, and sort of various characters and potential subplots are set up. So I'm not really a big Lord of the Rings fan. I'm not really invested in this stuff. I did enjoy the Peter Jackson films, although it's been a long time since I've watched them. Maybe if I rewatched them, I wouldn't be so into them. But I did like them, I think partly because he's a good director, and I think he brought his horror background to those films, which gave them a bit more of a punch, a bit more of an edge, made them a bit more darker and interesting, and to me, that's as good as you're going to get for Lord of the Rings, in my opinion. You know, if you like this stuff, you like this stuff, but generally speaking, it's not the genre for me, and Lord of the Rings isn't really the franchise for me. So I came into this with some trepidation, and there were certainly alarm bells ringing in the opening few minutes, because when you had this flashback at the start of the episode, you had this wistful sort of voiceover with this really ponderous, pretentious sort of dialogue. So I'll read you how the opening voiceover sort of the sort of dialogue. It's something like, "Nothing is evil in the beginning, and there was a time when the world was so young there had not yet been a sunrise. Believe then there was a light." There was still a light or something, but it's done in this wistful sort of voice, as I said, really pretentious. And then you get a scene with Grenadine with her brother where he's like asking her, like pondering this sort of question where he's like, "Do you know why a ship floats and a stone drops? Or does not, sorry." And then he starts talking about how because there's darkness beneath the ship and all this sort of bollocks, and he's using all this metaphor type thing, and it's like, well, no, mate, it's basic science. That's why a ship floats and a stone doesn't. But all this sort of stuff which you tend to get in like fantasy material like this, I just can't be doing with. It's sort of earthy, namby-pamby, fairy, sort of bollocks, really. I can't be doing with it. So what's interesting about this first episode is that, surprisingly, it's better than I expected. It's not as bad as I can expect, even though there is stuff in it like that. There's certain moments in it where it really leans into the Lord of the Rings stuff, which I'm just not going to get into or like, and there's enough moments like that that kind of had me rolling my eyes, but there's good stuff as well. Now, it's directed by Juan Antonio Barrera, who is a good director, who is a good visual fantasy type director, so he definitely does a good job in the direction. The visuals are very good for the most part. Like, the landscape looks beautiful. You can see where they've spent the money. And there are actually some quite dramatic and engaging moments. So one of the scenes I mentioned, like with her and her army going up this snowy mountain, and that was really well done, and you did feel like there was true jeopardy there of what's going to happen to them. So that felt very cinematic and very gripping, and I did actually like some of the conflict in that, where one of her men at one point was questioning about, can we realistically go on? Can we survive this? And it's sort of a character beat for her, where she's being very steadfast and sort of tunnel vision and is so determined to carry on the mission then she maybe can't see sense, or she's willing to put people at risk where maybe they don't need to be put at risk. So that stuff was quite well done, and the visual effects for what they are, I thought were quite good, because at one point there's I think it's like a snow worm or something they call it, that when they're in the caves that jumps out at them, and again, maybe the idea of a snow worm is a little bit on the cheesy side, but it does look pretty good when you see it in the episode. The visual effect I thought was well done, and so there's not many complaints when it comes to that stuff. As I said, like, her performance is good. Like, I'm not sure she's given that much to do that's interesting, but then again, it might just be some of my feelings about this sort of stuff. But she is good. Like, I was. There's definitely scenes where I couldn't really give a shit, like, just because of the sort of dialogue and some of the drama that was going on around her. But generally speaking, when she was on screen, she's kind of like watchable and engaging. But as I said, there's a lot of cheesy Lord of the Rings style stuff, and it's sort of interesting because a lot of that stuff I thought, well, okay, I'm enjoying some of this at least. But it's then when you cut away to like other characters and around the village, and as I said, you had the stuff with like the elves and the conflict there with like them and the villagers, and that stuff I really didn't give a shit about. You know, there's nothing interesting about it. I think some of the acting was quite bad. You've obviously got a big cast of characters. I keep forgetting Lenny Henry is in this, so every time he shows up it surprises me, but he's obviously someone who can act, so that's not an example. But there's definitely a lot of other people in the cast who I thought were really quite one-note style actors, and some of the drama they were like drumming up around the village I really didn't care about. Some of the symbolism I thought was very sort of clunky. The end of the episode, although it looked good like visually, was very sort of clunky and cheesy. And just as it went on more and more, it left me really cold. So I think because there's a good director there and because there's a good visual sense for the most part, then there's going to be certain things that maybe grab my attention and where I think, okay, maybe this isn't just a typical Lord of the Rings style story, but then it is sort of bogged down, I think, with a lot of the Lord of the Rings style tropes that are not for me. I just don't really care about them. So there's probably no escaping that, because even though I said there was good stuff in the story with the main girl in this episode, there was still plenty of like eye-rolling stuff in that, at least for me. So that's pretty much my feelings on the first episode. I may well come back for the second one and see how it plays out, because as I said, there were some positives in this first episode. It wasn't the complete kind of train wreck I was expecting, or the complete like, no, this isn't the show for me. I'm guessing maybe it won't be the show for me in the long run, but as I said, there were good things in it. So I'm going to assume that if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, then this is going to be a show for you. Then you're going to want to see this. I'll say that. And obviously, the money has been well spent. As I said, the visual and the landscapes are very, very nice to look at. So that's episode 1 of the new Lord of the Rings show. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always. Share me out on social media. And just to promote an older show that I do on the channel that I do with my co-host Rachel McDonald, and that is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We've recently started doing that. We've covered season 1. We will be covering season 2 soon. So that video is up on the channel if you want to check out our thoughts on Buffy season 1. But keep watching TV, and I'll be back soon. Thanks, guys. Goodbye.